Welcome to the People Leaders Podcast, the audio resource for managers and business leaders creating high-performing teams. Join leadership and team development experts Jan and Michelle Turkelson each week as they explore both subjects from every angle. Through practical tips, valuable insights, and compelling interviews with leadership experts around the world, you'll learn how to bring out the best in your staff and how to give your best as a leader.
Hey Michelle.
Hello Jen.
So we're going to talk about team agreements.
Ooh, team agreements. And what is it about team agreements and why are they important?
From a lot of the discussions that we've been having lately with teams, there's usually two issues that people, or I'm finding that teams have issues with, is that they're not clear about what they do, or they might be clear about what they do, but it's how they do it and how they interact with each other or stakeholders that is having an issue.
Spot on, Jan. And it actually goes to the heart of the one-on-one interactions that managers are having. They say, oh yeah, the person's doing a really good job in terms of what they have to deliver, but it's the way that they deliver, it's their behaviours. And what we try and encourage managers or leaders to think about is the behaviours. That is part of the performance. It's not just delivering the task, it's how you do the task. And so what we're doing is expanding that out to the team. So the team agreements looks at what are the behaviours that we as a team are all agreeing to uphold as we interact and move throughout our day and our week as a team.
Yeah, because what it can also do, it actually clarifies those roles and responsibilities because the teams are having regular interactions and they know what behaviours are appropriate. And it can also guide how you solve problems, how you make decisions, because of the way in which we've agreed that we are going to interact and exchange information.
Yeah, I love it because it actually provides you with a framework that if you don't have, you're actually going to have to muddle through, have a few conflicts, and it just takes time. And we don't really have a lot of time in organisations now. So what we're doing is we're creating a preventative measure so that we can hit the ground running and be really effective from day one. Because it's always, Jen, isn't it? It's the behavioural stuff that brings the teams unstuck.
Yeah, the soft stuff is the hard stuff.
Yeah.
And the influence of a team agreement will usually extend beyond the life of a team or a project if it's utilised really well, because then we start to understand the impacts of having constructive agreements in a team and how you can speed things up. So let's go through step by step how you would do it.
Okay, so step one is identifying what good looks like for the team. And so what you could do as a team is get your butcher's paper out or a whiteboard or just have a discussion around what are some of the behaviours that we would be seeing in this team if we were operating at, a high-performing team level or operating at our best in terms of the way that we communicate and interact with one another. And you just get all those statements out.
Yeah, so let's list some of those key areas. So, for example, think about the behaviours in relation to team meetings. So how do we want to behave? How do we want to show up? How do we want to prepare ourselves?
Yeah, so an example might be that, we are going to be on time and we are going to be fully present and we're going to listen. With all of our senses. That could be a statement that they make in relation to team meetings.
So I was in a senior leadership team meeting a couple of weeks ago and I started talking and there were 3 people who still had their laptops open, and one of the senior leaders actually stopped the meeting because I wasn't aware of it, stopped the meeting and said, excuse me, remember we agreed, and so everyone's laptop was closed down. So what they're doing is holding people to those agreements. That's an example.
Fantastic. Which leads to how are we going to communicate with each other? What is the language that we are going to aspire to use? Is it going to be clear and respectful, and we're going to acknowledge other people's ideas? Like, you get to choose. That's what I love about team agreements, Jan. How many, we've seen thousands over the years and we've never found one set of team agreements that are the same. you know, some teams call them team behaviours, team principles, those sorts of things. But principles. It all boils down to how are we going to interact with one another that we can all sign up for.
That's right. So the next area that you could focus on is maybe how you're going to manage disagreements. Like, how are we going to interact? So are we going to accept people are going to be different, and when they do, we actually acknowledge that as a good thing, you know, around diversity? Do we have this intent that we speak with good purpose and we respect people's rights, you know, to have a difference of opinion, and when they do have a difference of opinion, actually congratulate people for speaking up?
Oh, and the other one that I love that people are starting to introduce is above the line and below the line behaviour, which we actually have a whole podcast on and a template that we will use above the line language when we're interacting, and above the line behaviour as we interact. And that's a nice, it's sort of a broad view, isn't it? Using above the line, below the line. That could be something that you incorporate as well.
So some of the other behaviours around perhaps stakeholders. How do you want to communicate and deal with your stakeholders? How do we want to agree around making commitments? Do we actually hold each other to account? And how do we do that? What language do we use? And another one is perhaps showing support. So how will we demonstrate that we show support and encouragement of our team members? So, for example, we're going to check in on each other on a regular basis. You know, are you okay?
That's right. And we had a senior leadership team who had this as, really important value for them. And what they decided to do is actually, so at the end of each day, because everybody was working really long hours, make sure that not one senior leadership team member is left on their own, that they walk out together. They're encouraging them to, you know, take that break and, you know, don't burn the midnight oil, so to speak. And so they're great ways that you can bring these to life.
Great. So I've just gone through step 1. So this is like capturing all the different types of behaviours.
Yeah, so now, you know, step 2 is just, you know, listing out all of those collective behaviours that the team agrees might be used as a guide. So we've given you some key areas, and now you've got some statements. And what we want to then do is whittle those statements down to maybe, you know, 7, no more than 7, but you get to choose that as well. You know, we've had teams that have had 12, we've had teams that have had 3. That's the beauty of this, is you get to choose what is going to be the most appropriate for you. And then, you know, step 3 is choose the behavioural statements that the team is going to use as a guide, you know, to in terms of how they behave and interact with one another.
And step 4 is, once you have those statements, you know, around 7 to 10, these are really what we would call on-track behaviours. Now, if you wanted to take it a step further, you can create the opposite of each statement about what does off-track behaviours. Now, what I love about the on-track, off-track, it's a non-judgmental term, and it's a language that the whole team can use. So, for example, we talked about above the line, below the line. You could say, are we on track or are we off track as far as our behaviours is concerned? And I think this is important because it really focuses the conversation around what non-constructive behaviour, below the line behaviour, off-track behaviour looks like, and then how we're going to develop an approach if we actually do find that.
Yeah, that's a great optional exercise for them. So what's an example of an on-track one, Jen, and then we'll do the opposite?
Yeah, so communicate any potential broken agreements at the first opportunity.
Right,
so that's an on-track behaviour.
Yep, and then the off-track would be like avoid or putting off communicating a potential delay, for example. All right, so that's an additional. And then if you wanted to, like, here's a stretch target for you, and that could be, all right, so let's say that we have identified some off-track behaviours. It's like, okay, so what? We've identified them. Then this is where it gets sticky. What do we do about, you know, calling each other and or being held accountable and being held to account? How do we hold each other to account?
That's the juicy conversation.
Totally.
So if I see this happening in the team meeting, what are we going to agree?
And what can we all give each other permission to do?
So one of the teams that I've been working with, they have a word that they use, and it's a non-judgmental word like radio. Another team actually use cards, like different coloured cards. If it's getting too toxic, they have the red card. And again, they may not use it all the time, but it is there, because if you want to change or shift the behaviour, you actually got to shift some of the physical environment and those artefacts and symbols that you're using as a team.
And really, you know whether your team is getting to the heart of it when after a while they start, self-correcting themselves. And one way to do that is at the end of each session together, just do a quick review of your team agreements. And you don't say, you can get people to self-reflect and say, okay, how did you go personally? They don't have to share it with everybody else, but you want to get people to own this themselves.
Yeah, and have it on part of the agenda just as a quick review. And sometimes people who have regular meetings, they actually have their agreements as the facing page of their presentation pack. And so after you've come up with these on-track behaviours or agreements, then you want to make it visible. And part of it is, do you actually want to have it visible in the main office area? Do you want to have it as part of an internal signature that you use? So you find ways that you want to make it visible and useful.
Yeah, and ask the team.
Yeah. And so we really invite you to have a team agreement, because a team agreement is another toolkit to creating high-performing teams, just like a team purpose statement is.
Oh, without a doubt. Like it and we noticed that all teams that work, really effectively and are high-performing have this sorted, because this is the behavioural element, all the soft skills, interpersonal elements that can really be brought into the fore by creating a set of team agreements.
And this is a team-building activity that is really useful, but also it encourages every single team member to have some participation in. So if you're a people leader and you want to introduce this, the first thing you need to be clear about is the why. So why are you doing it? Why now? And what's in it for the people and the team? And if you can articulate that, the fact that you are interested in creating a culture in the team that is supportive and constructive, I think this team has the making of being high performing, and this is just one step in the process.
Yeah, and it provides us all with the guide on what good looks like, and we all get to participate in that. Who doesn't want to be part of a team where you have invested some time and energy into?
And what this also demonstrates is your acknowledgement that the well-being of members in your team is important. So you're establishing that psychological safety aspect. And so, like for incidents of, bullying and harassment, you have started to create steps.
Very good. Yes, absolutely.
That demonstrate that the way in which we speak with each other is very important, and it's holding people to account.
So I just wonder of all those issues that happen in teams where there is conflict interpersonally and intra-team, did they have a set of team agreements, and were they using them? I bet not.
So we really invite you to have a go at team agreements. We've got a template for you to use.
Of course we do.
Yeah. And that's how you're going to grow as a leader.
Oh, absolutely. Action. And if you do come up with a set of team agreements, please send us an email and share it with us. We'd love to see your version of it. So good luck.
You've been listening to the People Leaders Podcast with Michelle and Jan Turkelson. For show notes and other free resources, please visit us at peopleleaderspodcast.com. Do you know someone else who could benefit from cutting-edge leadership and management techniques? Please take a moment to share this and other episodes via your podcast app, email, or social media channels. Each share helps us fulfill our goals of reducing workplace stress and increasing job satisfaction for leaders, managers, and their teams worldwide. The People Leaders Podcast is brought to you by the Experts On Air Podcast Network.